Thank you for joining the last session, one of the last sessions, this afternoon. I hope you're having a really good time at the summit this year. So this session is called Life at the AWS. So the first thing I'm going to do is explain what we mean and what this session is about. So basically, we at Amazon, we always start with a customer, right? And one thing that we get a lot from our customers is, a lot of questions around how we innovate at Amazon, how we work as a team to constantly come with new services and new features and innovate. So we always have those conversations on a one-to-one basis with our customers, and we thought, what about scaling and taking that conversation to an event like the summit? So that's why we're doing it here. Today, for this panel, I've got 4 brilliant, what we call Amazonians, so people that have been with AWS for a while now. So we've got Ian Messingham, who's heading the evangelist team globally. We've got Darren Murray, head of the business development in EMEA, and Dave Tonman, one of our sales managers in the UK, and Fitz Simon. What do you do? You actually created your own role, and you are heading the WellArchitected team globally. So I'm going to start the questions here with you, Darren. So you've been here for 6 years, if not more. And just to put a bit of perspective, remember AWS is only 11 years old. So when you've been here for 6 years, you're a veteran at Amazon. So Darren, you've been here for 6 years, so that's quite a while. Can you tell me what keeps you motivated?
So I would say there's a lot of things, but I have a short amount of time, so I'll isolate it down to really 2 things that strike me. And I talked to a lot of customers, talked to a lot of folks that were recruiting about this as well. And one is just the concept of this company being a culture of builders. And so what has attracted me to the company and what keeps me working hard and motivated is the fact that we're creating and building not just great technology and a great platform, but we're thinking differently around these sorts of events and programs for folks like you. We're thinking differently on how should we be building teams and motivating people. And so if you're someone that likes to be in a place that's trying to do things that haven't been done before, if you like to be in roles where you haven't necessarily been asked to execute someone else's business plan, you're really challenged to do something on your own, then this is that type of culture. So motivation for me around being a builder, as well as a point that you'll hear us all 4 talk about quite a bit today, and that is this concept of these leadership principles, these 14 things that if you don't know what they are, you can Google them and find them easily. But these 14 core pieces of DNA that we as Amazonians live by, they're not something pretty that's written in calligraphy and hung on the wall in the lobby that we all glance at as we walk in. They're the way we hire, the way we rate people and reward people. It's the way we build business cases to open offices and launch new services. So it's a company that's putting their money where their mouth is and focusing on the core values that are most important. And that's pretty motivating to me.
So you said, so it's a company of builders. Can you talk about something that you built at AWS?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I'm fairly new to London, and yes, I know I don't sound like a local, but I've actually spent the previous 3 years in Sweden, where I had a part of building out the Nordic operation for AWS. So nothing like getting off a plane and not having a business and leaving 3 years later with a quite sizable organization, a new region being launched, a number of offices being opened, and so the chance to be able to put your fingerprints on a team and on a geography and see that business change is something that I consider just an incredible opportunity, and frankly, an opportunity that I wouldn't trade really for anything.
Thank you. So Ian, now I'm going to ask you the next question. So to you, what is making AWS unique?
I think I have a very privileged role in my function. The role of evangelism is to communicate with developers and educate and inspire them to build on the platform. So I think that in itself is great fun. But the thing that really makes AWS a unique place to do that job is the pace with which we release new services and new technical features. We want to be out with a good portfolio of content that we can talk to customers about, really excite them about the possibilities of building in the cloud, new ways of building applications and services, new ways of making their lives as software developers and technology professionals easier. And AWS just has a great and growing portfolio for that. So there's a fantastic opportunity to go out and deliver information and education about content that customers have really strong natural affinity with and are excited about. But also it gives myself and my team a really interesting challenge of learning and trying to stay fresh about this stuff. I used to joke that it was difficult to keep up to date with it, but actually I've come to learn that it's actually not difficult. It's just exciting and challenging to try and stay on top of what we have that's brand new. Last week I was in Tel Aviv at an event similar to this, a little bit smaller but very similar. I was asked to do a talk on Amazon Lex. I had no knowledge of it a week before. By the time I got on stage, I was able to give a decent demo of Amazon Lex integrated with Mapbox and talk about how developers could build using that tool. I mean, that's just great fun for someone with the skills and kinds of interests that I have.
That's great. And Dave, so you come from a different background and you have a very different role basically at AWS compared to Ian. So do you agree with what he's saying in terms of learning? What do you find unique at AWS?
Yeah, very much so. I'd certainly echo what Ian shared. But for me, and touching on our leadership principles, customer obsession, I think is an absolute unique in the organisation. That we're looking at building long-term, long-lasting customer relationships that will outlast probably, certainly myself and my career. Some examples of that, thinking about the Trusted Advisor tool that we make available to our clients and customers, where they can understand the assets, the AWS assets that they're not utilising to their fullest, potentially stop them. We've saved our customers, in excess of $350 million over the last number of years. And I can't think there's many technology vendors that you would have worked with who would proactively come to you and save you that kind of money. So, yeah, that's definitely unique for me, customer obsession.
Right, thank you. So we talked a lot. I mean, I think all of you now so far have mentioned the leadership principles, right? So, Fitz, can you give us a description of what the leadership principles are and how important they are to AWS and to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Darren actually summed it up nicely, and I could just say what he said. But I think the main thing is that the leadership principles are the core values that are important to us. As we, hire people and build our culture, it's important that we have a way of understanding how we think about things, how we make decisions. And so as we grow our business and hire additional people into the team, our leadership principles allow us to ensure that we hire people who share the same values as we do. For example, customer obsession, as was mentioned, we want to hire people who really are obsessed about customer outcomes. And if you're building a team that is maintaining a culture and growing at the rate that Amazon and AWS is, then you want to make sure that you have something like your leadership principles that remind you why you make decisions and how you make decisions.
And I add to that also that the leadership principles represent the real culture of Amazon. One thing that I constantly say to the people I interview for roles at AWS is, so you have to look at the leadership principles, but it's not just for the interview. The leadership principles are part of everyday life at AWS, and we talk about them. So to build this type of events, with my team, what we say is, I have a high standard, and that's why one of the leadership principles, a high standard. We want to deliver results, that's another one, and obviously, always be customer obsessed. I think I could use all the leadership principles, and apply them for everything that we do on a daily basis.
Definitely pick the right one, though.
Yes. Great. So, Darren, what's your favorite leadership principle, and why?
It's hard to pick a favorite, but one that, and you know me well enough, is the one that we call bias for action. And so the bias for action concept for us really revolves around the fact that we want to be a company that is moving forward at all times. And I can tell you, as I'm sure many of you can attest, we've all been a part of teams or organizations that are so focused on making the perfect, best, right decision at the perfect time that at times analysis paralysis can kick in. We spend so much time assessing something or researching something that the very market opportunity we were looking to capitalize on has passed. And so for those of you that may be into sailing, the concept of you never sail from point A to point B. You tack your way from one location to another. And it's that kind of metaphor that really plays well into bias for action, meaning myself, the gentleman here on the stage, all of us at this company gravitate towards people and towards processes that allow us to move forward, knowing that we're going to continue to refine our thinking and change direction and evolve as we go. The key point, though, is to move. to move forward and begin to go towards the outcome that you know is right for your customers or you believe is right. And as you're learning and failing and experimenting and gaining new insights, then you course correct. But we're not a company of standing still, waiting to have everything absolutely perfect in our heads before we move forward. And so far, our customers and the market have told us that's what they want. They want forward movement, and they want a company that's humble enough to know when we're doing things well, but also a company that's humble enough to say, this is not working, and we're going to change directions. And that's been a really, really powerful leadership principle for me and our teams.
Yeah, and I think that goes very well with what you said earlier about Amazon being focused on hiring teams of builders, because we need people that have that bias for action and ownership, right? So Ian, give me an example of how the leadership principles are applied. And we talk about a lot about the leadership principles now, because I can't highlight enough how important they are to the culture at AWS.
So I've been at Amazon about 3.5 years now, and in the evangelism role that I have, myself and my team, we are in public-facing roles. We're the public face and voice of Amazon and AWS with the developer community. We play a role in communicating with the media and managing analyst relations. So we have quite a high-profile role. This means that we need to maintain a high-quality bar for new team members and ensure that new team members in evangelism are comfortable, at ease, and also meet our quality bar in the way in which they communicate with these external audiences. We have a valuable brand, and we don't want to have evangelists or other members of the team, for that matter, saying or doing things that might degrade customer trust, which we've worked really hard to earn. So that means that we have an onboarding period, and during that onboarding period, we don't let our evangelists go out and speak publicly on behalf of Amazon. We hold them back until we're comfortable that they understand our messaging and can represent it well. So when I first started, I couldn't do my day job of participating in events like this and for the third-party events for about 90 days. So I was going through my qualification process. But I didn't want to sit on my hands. I wanted to do something. I wanted to maybe show a little bit of bias for action. So I started looking at other ways that I could get involved with the developer community to help spread Amazon Web Services message and find influential developers that could be important in the future for community building. And I discovered AWS user groups, which a few of you in the room might be involved in. These are community-led organizations that operate in cities around the world. We don't own them, but we support them. And they are forums for developers to come together, technical end users to come together and share best practices and ideas. And I thought this was a program that could potentially be beneficial if it was scaled. So I started thinking about whether or not this was a good idea. And I used the leadership principles to validate whether or not it was something that I should pursue. I spoke to some people that participated in these user groups, and without exception, the customers that attended them and participated in them thought they were really valuable, and they got a lot of added value out of participating. So I thought, right, that ticks a box for customer obsession. Customers find them valuable. And then I thought about how big the program could be. At the time, there were 2 in the UK, one in Manchester and one in London, varying degrees of activity. But I looked at Japan. In Japan, there were 43 AWS user groups, one in every major region of the country. So it seemed to me like there was an opportunity to think big, which is another one of our leadership principles or LPs, and really expand this program dramatically. I thought, well, a city of 350,000 people or more should probably have one of these. So I thought, yeah, think big. And then lastly, and this is a leadership principle that isn't spoken about that much, frugality. The user groups are funded by sponsors and other interested parties. Amazon don't spend a penny to run them other than paying for people like me to go along and talk and help them be successful. It's just a little bit of resource. So it's also frugal. And on that assessment, I decided that it would be a good thing to drive, a good thing to get involved with. Today we have 12 in the UK and 4 in Ireland. And we have over nearly 4,000 members here in London in the AWS user group in London. So it's been a very successful initiative. But I didn't have to go by a manager to validate it. I knew that if I assessed it on the basis of those leadership principles, I could do my own assessment of whether or not it was the right sort of program, right sort of initiative for me to invest my time in.
So I think we covered the leadership principles quite well now. So I want to talk about innovation. And Darren, I want you to tell us a bit more about innovation. This is basically, the overarching thing, for this event. It's all about innovation, how you can innovate in the cloud. So we talked about the leadership principle, it's one thing. And when we talk about the processes on how we innovate, the processes that we follow, each of us, to be able to innovate, I'd like you to describe how we work. I want you to describe the narrative process, and I want you to describe, the working backward process that are really, two unique processes at Amazon.
Yeah, so those two things are closely aligned. You've heard us talk quite a bit about putting the customer in the middle and reverse engineering from the customer. And I want to touch on that for a moment because, again, that's very easy to say. It's actually very hard to do. And so as Jeff Bezos is constantly known as saying, everyone has the best intentions. Mm-hmm. It's the mechanisms that you need in order to make those intentions come to life. And so we have a good intention of ensuring that we're putting customers in the center of everything that we do. If we stopped there, we would be very challenged to do that. And so things like the narrative, this 6-pager concept that we've talked about, that again, you can research and find out, is one of those mechanisms. And what it allows us to do is anyone in the company is empowered to write a 6-page narrative, essentially a business case, that begins with an outcome that has to have a positive impact on a customer. It can be as small or as big as anything you can imagine, but if you write a narrative, and these guys probably all, as I do, have experienced misfiring a few times on narratives, if you can't tie your idea back to a customer getting benefit from your idea, then you won't make very much progress, as you can imagine. And yet, things like delivering new services, Ian's talked about the massive amount of releases that we've done, and that's going to continue based, again, not on just a bunch of smart people in Seattle and around the world building products. It's based on you in the room saying, here's what we need from you now. Here's what we need our businesses to have. And so that direct input is used to then innovate on our platform. Even things like opening regions. I mentioned that I had experience of that in Sweden. As you know, here in London, we have the great news of a region. Those come about, again, because of the business case that was written about you and about the customers that we're representing. And so, again, these mechanisms around 6-pagers are the actual way that we make these good intentions come to life, right? And so many other mechanisms that are available to us, but I would agree with you that the narrative, the 6-pager, is probably the most powerful one we have.
Yeah, I agree. So to stay on the innovation theme, Dave, you've been with us for nearly 4 years, I believe?
Just shy of 4 years, yep.
Is it still day one for you?
It's always day one. We have an expression at AWS, it's always day one. I think maybe if I can elaborate on what day one looks like in my world. In fact, I think for all of us. I think if you could imagine your very first day in your career or your very first day in setting up a business, and some of those emotions and those feelings you have, you're energized, there's an enthusiasm, you're a sponge. You've got a real appetite to learn as much as you can from as many people as you possibly can. But I think probably most importantly, you have that hunger. You've got a real hunger and a desire to succeed. And I believe that our success comes from having that desire and drive to succeed. And we treat every day like the first day of our business. And that makes it an incredibly, I think, a unique environment and a very unique point of time as well.
Thank you. So I want to talk about our customers now. And Fitz, I've got the next question for you. Can you give me an example on how in your career, you've been with us for over 5 years, I believe you were there like in the original team.
Yeah,
so can you give me an example where you really impacted a customer with some of the project that you led for them?
Yeah, so I've been very lucky working at AWS. When I started my career here, I actually started as a solutions architect working directly with customers, and I got to work with gaming companies, entertainment, retail, etc., all the fun things in life. So my life was very interesting in terms of the problems that customers were trying to solve. I was lucky enough to work with a broadcaster in the UK on one of the projects they were doing. It was absolutely fascinating as a consumer, looking at how these technologies are used and built. And when you're doing video streaming, one of the things that's often done is that you're taking a live stream of video and you're taking that video and you're chunking it up into 30-second chunks and storing those as file in your storage system. And then you have to build systems that takes that all those files and reassemble programs that people might want to watch. And classically, or in a traditional architecture, a broadcaster would then have to build a system to download the files off the storage systems, to put the files together and to trim the edges, and then put that back into the storage system. And we talk a lot about the undifferentiated heavy lifting, and believe me, I still can't say that very easily. that people have to do when they're building architectures. And actually, one of the things that we got to explore with them was talking about actually in S3, there's a capability to do multi-part uploads. And if you specify the source and destination of that as both being S3, all of those operations can be done by S3. So you can say to S3, go and get these 50 files, put them together, chop the beginning and the ends off, and then call it this file, and it does it all for you. Now, that was technically great fun, but more importantly for the customer, they got to remove that item from their backlog. They didn't have to write the code to do that. They didn't have to think about, is this going to work in a repeatable manner? And they could actually then focus their developers on the value-adding activities. So they ended up with an architecture that was simpler, faster, lower cost, and they got to work on new features that actually would delight their customers. So it was an interesting and a great example of the kind of things you get to do working with customers and helping them innovate faster.
That's great. That's a really great story. Thank you. So there's a lot of challenges. I'm going back to you, Darren. A lot of challenges, in the life at AWS and every day, at Amazon. So what challenges and complexities do you typically face?
I moved to London on Saturday, so my biggest challenge is figuring out my commute at the moment, figuring out how to move around this city. So if anyone has best practices, I'd love to meet you afterwards. Yeah, City Mapper. Okay, that's good. Outside of my commute challenges, which are too personal to share here on stage, the biggest challenge that I face, again, goes back to a little bit of what we discussed, but that is not only hiring. Hiring is always a challenge for all of us, finding great talent, but hiring at the speed and at the scale and at the cultural fit, as was mentioned, as we need. We're a company that, believe it or not, we will choose to leave entire teams open, entire roles open, until we find someone that meets the cultural requirements of AWS, less the functional. And so our process is focused on, can you functionally do the role? Great, we check that off. And then we quickly move to, now that we know you can functionally do this, do you live these 14 things? Will you obsess over customers? Will you put your own short-term desires behind the long-term desires of customers? And frankly, as we're transforming and trying to disrupt the way IT is provided to folks like you, there aren't as many business development, sales, customer-facing people, maybe non-technical folks as we or maybe as you would like, who have that long-term orientation. And so for me, that is my biggest challenge, is building teams as fast as we need to build them, but making sure that that's happening with our most core values, our most core cultural attributes in mind. So something that I do struggle with every day. I've struggled with for 6 years, and in my opinion, the day we stop struggling with that is the day that our bar has become too low and that we may be making the wrong decisions. And so it may sound very strange to you that I wake up with that stress, and it's that same stress that motivates me, because it shows me that we're making the right decision. So I'm also clearly got some major mental problems, so we can also discuss that at another point in time.
Thank you. So one of the most common questions that we get asked by our customers is around training and development within Amazon. So Ian, you had, you've been here for over 3 years, and you were the UK evangelist. And then you moved to an EMEA role, and you recently got promoted to the global lead for all the evangelist team at AWS. So can you tell us a bit more about what we mean by development and training?
Yeah, first thing to say at Amazon and AWS is promotion's a word that's used, but it's more like loading of more responsibilities onto you. Okay, so definitely I have a lot more responsibility now than I had when I started, which I think, again, I really enjoy that aspect of my role. I really like the fact that through that development process, I've been able to scale up the impact that I've had. I've done a lot of hiring, a lot of aborted attempts to hire people that unfortunately haven't met our hiring bar, but have still been, in many cases, very, very strong candidates that have gone on to do great things that just haven't been a good fit for Amazon and AWS. So that's something that I've found a strong area of development, developing my hiring skills, my interviewing skills, developing my own quality bar for candidates that want to come and join the organization. I find that's been really interesting. The second little confession I guess I should make is that I wasn't in developer relations before I came here. I was a practitioner of technology strategy, and before that I was in operations in a telecommunications provider, so I don't have a background in DevRel or developer relations. That's been a practice area that I've had to learn pretty much from scratch in those 3.5 years. Thankfully, people seem to think I'm pretty good at it, so I guess that's something that I'm lucky about, but I've progressed through having some skills in speaking and leadership and management, and then kind of building those the competency-related part of my role as I've gone along with some good support from people that are around me. We've got some really strong developer relations pros elsewhere in the company that have helped me a lot.
Yeah, great. And I think the great thing with the four of you is that you all have a very unique career, development at AWS and fits. So as I said, when I introduced you, you actually created your own role. When I met you, you were a solution architect as part of the UK team. Can you tell us about, your career path at Amazon?
Yeah, so, the reality is that, I feel that people are generally successful in their career when they align their passion with what they're trying to do at a business. And one of my passions is looking at how we can use data to help achieve better outcomes in IT and hopefully impact the human condition that way. And one of the things that I observed was that customers were demanding more consistent prescriptive advice around architecture. So I wrote a particular document describing what that outcome might look like and why it would matter to customers. And out of that, we actually created a team focused on delivering the WellArchitected Framework. And I obviously, put my hand up to lead that because I had a deep passion for that subject. And when I look to hire people into my team or to any team that I've managed historically, I always want to understand what that person's trying to achieve with their career, work out what the gap to close is from where they are now to where they're trying to get to, and then look at what the business is trying to achieve and the activities we need to carry out, and work out which one of those activities will help them be successful in their career. And I think, what I've done and what I try to do for my team as well is to, ensure that when we achieve business success, it's because of individual success instead of it being in spite of individuals' needs. So really making sure that, we understand what people are trying to achieve, giving people things to work on that are their passion, and in an environment where you are customer obsessed, there are many, many, many opportunities where customer needs things doing, and there are people in the team who have, a passion around those technologies or soft skills or things they want to do that gives them an opportunity to grow their career and also create great outcomes for customers as well.
Thank you. And Dave, so I want to ask you exactly the same question because you built a team, and I want you to, to tell us more about the story.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough. I've managed to have the opportunity to build two teams now within the organisation. So if I talk about my current role, so I look after the corporate business, so our collective of customers in the corporate and enterprise segments, and I've tripled the size of the resource that we've got over the last 18-month period. So recruiting has been pretty much my life. I think last year alone I did 267 hours of interviewing, not just my own business. That was across the broader Amazon group, but yeah, a lot of time hiring. So I've structured my team into a number of vertical practices so that we can really align to our customers' language and our customers' requirements. So we have a retail segment, a media and entertainment practice, an engineering practice, and a financial services practice. And I think just aligning the resource so that we can all go on that journey together where we're trying to win customers' hearts and minds is absolutely critical. I've really tried to address the diversity challenge that we have, and I think particularly attracting women into technological roles is a challenge for all of us. If I can maybe talk a bit about how we look to develop individuals within Amazon, and Ian touched on it, sort of promotions aren't necessarily sort of referenced frequently, but people are given additional responsibilities and initiatives to lead and to drive. And a number of my team have devised their own businesses in themselves, which will be very successful in their own rights. We've recently embarked on a early careers program within Amazon Web Services. We're still a very young organisation. We're sort of 7 years young in the UK, but we've a number of the business leaders have created this early careers program. I'm delighted to say that we've just hired 16 interns into our organisation just a week last Monday. A number of them you would have probably met and seen on the floor today because they already had roles and projects that they were aligned to, and they were probably running late on their first day. And we have 10 graduates who are joining us in the middle part of September. And the really pleasing thing, and it wasn't a forced distribution, is that we have 50% of each, both the interns and the graduates, from females interested in technology. So absolutely delighted about that.
Yeah, that's great. And Darren, you've got a very atypical story as well. So you were in the US, you moved to the Nordics, and now you're here. So and
Moving up in the world, is that?
Yeah, finally you made it here. So can you tell us, and completely different roles as well. So can you tell us about training and development and what you learned along the way to finally be heading the EMEA business development team?
Yeah, I'll do my best. So as you said, I'm reaching my 6-year anniversary. I joined AWS from another small software company. It starts with an M and ends with a soft. It's based in Seattle as well, where I spent a little over 10 years. So I had the opportunity to come over to Amazon at a time when AWS had been around already for 5 years, as you know. But we had a very strategic sales and marketing model. If you've seen the Field of Dreams, it's the if you build it, they will come model. And when I joined, we were shifting that to realizing that the platform was getting so significant, the market was getting a bit more crowded, and that we felt like, and we're hearing from customers, that we need some advice in the field. We need people to meet with and to help us through this journey. And so I took that leap of faith and came over to AWS and had the opportunity to carry on and have a few different roles in the US. The last one I had was actually similar to this guy's role, so looking over the corporate business for North America. And then again, had the chance to go to the Nordics and then have recently come here. Over that amount of time, there's a few things that strike me. One is AWS and Amazon, as I'm sure many of your companies, are a company of raw materials, meaning there's incredible programs, incredible people, great recommendations and advice. What we don't necessarily have, and this is by design, by the way, is a very, very overly structured process, right? So, for example, I spent a time in my early career at Accenture or Anderson Consulting, a great career experience. Especially at that time, it was very prescriptive, right? Very, very, very prescriptive as to the experiences that you get. Here at this company, what we find is that each of us should be given the opportunity to build our own portfolio of development. With that being said, as I said, it's an array of what you can choose from in order to develop yourself, but it is really up to the individual to have that focus and have that aspiration and put all those pieces together into a development plan. And so I found that for myself in the US, and frankly, every single time I've changed roles, including the most recent role here in London, I find myself going back to that day one, going back to that same feeling. I would end this, though, by saying there's 3 main questions that I feel lucky to have been able to ask myself throughout my career at Amazon, and it's what we talk about as a team often, which is, one, when we wake up in the morning, what do we really love to do? Secondly, what do we think we're good at? Where do we have skills that can add value? And then thirdly, what do our customers need? And what we find is if you can answer those questions, and if we as team members can answer those questions and overlay the answers, if you can find a role that is the intersection of the 3 answers, that's a pretty powerful place to be, right? Because you end up spending your time doing something you love, you spend your time doing something you're good at, and the customers around you see value from what you're doing. And so what a great career, right? What a great opportunity to work hard and do those sorts of things. So I consider myself very, very blessed for that opportunity.
So where do you think you'll be in 1 year time?
I'm still going to be here in London. According to my wife and my 14 and 13-year-old daughters, we're going to be here for quite some time.
Right. Okay. I know you're all working because I work, very closely with the 4 of you. I know that you all have your daily job. But one thing that we do a lot at Amazon is we take on additional responsibilities and additional projects that have nothing to do with our role, why we were hired originally, and that's great because we learn a lot, running those projects. So can you tell me one of the projects that you're working on, Fitz?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that I'm working on is my day job is the WellArchitected Framework, but also it's also thinking about how do we help customers be successful through understanding what good outcomes look like. So how do we use data to learn about what helps people to be successful? Now that's not necessarily something which I have a tangible value I can put against that. But actually understanding those kind of things will help us to be more informed about how we talk about these things. Also, trying to understand how people go through their journey as a solutions architect, how you start from day one as being somebody working directly with customers, learning how our technologies work, and then working out how we help customers achieve good outcomes. Thinking as a manager how you help people through that journey, because as you can imagine, moving from being the situation of talking about a technology to being, the person who is the nominated expert in the room can be daunting. So helping people to understand how to do that, and that's kind of, I think we would call that hire and develop the best, is investing in the people in the team. It's not my day job, but ultimately I know that if we help everyone in our team be better, it will help me be better as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, so Dave, you mentioned earlier the new graduate program that we launched at AWS.
Yeah,
and so you started working on that a few months ago.
The Early Careers Program. So we launched that in February. Well, the idea was born in February of this year. And to take on Darren's note around writing the narrative, I couldn't ever imagine that the team that put that narrative together would have ever thought this is a business critical idea, something that we need to put an investment into. Should we maybe start that graduate program in 2018? If it was that critical, it wouldn't have washed. So it was. It's great to see that come to life in such a short period of time. Some of the other areas I get to enjoy in my role, I run a number of our new hire orientations, which is across the broader Amazon group. So we're at the moment recruiting something in the order of around 50 to 70 new hires every Monday morning in our head offices in London. And it's great to sort of, welcome them into the organisation, help them appreciate and understand the importance, significance around the leadership principles, and just really immerse them in those early stages where they are drinking through the fire hose, because that's what it feels like. And a number of other areas that I get to enjoy.
Thank you. And I'll finish with you, Ian, because I know that you are involved in so many things. It was actually quite frustrating when you were working for my team, in the UK, and then all of a sudden you were flying like everywhere.
Strictly speaking, Sonia, I wasn't working for your team, I was working alongside your team.
Whatever. Yeah.
So there's a couple of things that I'm working on that are not yet announced that I can't talk about, but some things that I have been focusing on. I joined a community within Amazon called the Bar Raising Community, which is a quality control function that we use in hiring to make sure that we're consistently hiring and developing the best talent that we can. And that's a lengthy program that requires some mentorship and some guidance and then some governance and approvals at the end to qualify as what we call a bar raiser. So I did that. Second thing I did last year was worked on the first AWS Reinvent Community Summit, which was a standalone one-day event within the AWS Reinvent program at Las Vegas, which is our large user conference, where we brought together 900 to 1,000 members of the AWS user group community worldwide for a community-led content program with speakers from outside AWS, user group leaders, community heroes, other people that we felt had interesting insights to share into the broader, less technical aspects of the AWS community globally. So that's something I did with colleagues from the worldwide developer marketing team. There are probably others, but those are two pretty recent and interesting examples, I think.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. And I'd like to just mention, because it's super important for me, one of the programs that I worked on is, and I hope you heard about it this morning with Gavin during the keynote, is the AWS Restart initiative. And that was such a great learning experience. So my team created the name, the logo, we worked with legal, we worked with so many people, the Prince's Trust, MOD, so a lot of great training and experience for myself and for the rest of the team. That was unique, basically, and that's something that personally I had never been given the opportunity, before joining a company like Amazon. So we're done with the questions, and I would like to, so first of all, thank you for attending this session, and I would like to invite you to stay with us. There's drinks that are going to be served in a few minutes in the expo hall, so if you want to ask us any questions, obviously you're welcome, but there's also an email address that we made available, so it's simply life@aws@amazon.com, so don't hesitate to contact us and the team will get back to you. Thank you very much.